Welcome, and it's long delayed if you play the game, but I finally am doing a video on my favorite one we have in the game, the IAR-81C. I got this as soon as it came available as a premium aircraft, and then I took a very long break from the game, which unfortunately didn't give me a lot of flying experience on it. But I've been flying it a lot since I came back to the game. I love it historically, I love it in the game, and I wanted to do a video talking about it. So this one is going to be talking a little bit about it in comparison to other aircraft, and then talking about it and showing it in air combat and what it does well in there. And then the next one's going to be showing it and talking about it as a ground attack plane. So rather than one giant long video, I'll do both sides of it. Anyway, historically, this is a indigenously designed Romanian aircraft, the only one in game and the only one indeed that saw combat in the war, really, of any type. This one we have is the final version of it, which was what was facing the American bombing campaign in 1944, the Russians in 43 and 44 on the Eastern Front, and stayed in their inventory until about 1947-48, when it was mostly pulled and scrapped, but a few of them were converted into two-seat trainers. So it did have a relatively long life for an indigenously designed World War II aircraft, but not real well known outside of Europe and aviation enthusiast circles. The version we have, as you can see, is armed with two cannon and two machine gun, which I'll talk about in a little bit going forward, but for now, just taking a look at it here. Uh, it only has a top speed of 301 miles an hour in game and a turn time of 20 seconds, which we're going to be comparing with some comparable aircraft like this one that is its stablemate pretty much at this tier. Uh, Italian and German get put together a lot, so you have the BF 109E, E3 and E4, pretty much the same performance. You notice 60 miles an hour faster, about 1 second slower on the turn time, but a much better rate of climb. This one doesn't have quite the guns that the IAR does, however, but its speed and climbing rate give it much better dogfight ability, in my opinion. For comparison to an enemy aircraft, here's your Yak-7 at the same battle value. Again, much higher top speed, but slower turn time, better rate of climb. It's got similar to the later model 109G weapon loadouts, so don't let it get behind you, but you can outmaneuver it pretty easily. Going forward, we're getting into stuff like the P-39 here, which either American or I believe there's a Russian version. I can't remember now. I haven't flown the Russian or the American tech tree in so long. I've kind of lost track. But the P400, I just went with this one. They all have roughly the same performance at this particular level. Again, faster, slower turn time, moderately better rate of climb overall. But the firepower in this thing is just insane. Then you get into what does not belong, in my opinion, at this battle rating, is your Corsair, which, holy shit, 417 miles an hour at this tier, but 22-second turn time and 650 cal machine guns. If you suckered into a turn fight, you can kick the crap out of it. Don't let it get behind you. You're screwed. And then getting into further American that you run into at this tier is, wow, this one, there we go. The P-38, which, unless you happen to get above it and can dive or catch it on somebody else's tail in a turn fight, don't even bother with the IAR. It is so much faster than you. It doesn't turn as well, but that's not including flaps. A good pilot can really wring that thing out. So don't even bother unless you have the absolute advantage against it. And again, the firepower on that thing will just blow you to pieces. Now, comparable in game, but not so much historically, is one of the things that annoys me with this is look at the max speed on the Spitfire, which 355 to be expected, but look at the turn time on that thing. The IAR and the Spitfire have almost the exact same wing loading, which again is not a strict determiner of turn rate, but the IAR is slower with the same wing loading, They should not be that far apart in turn time. Now, your X-ray view going in, you notice right in front of you, you have two massive fuel tanks right in front of the pilot, and because this is a premium aircraft and the snail has decided to handicap it, the engine is extremely vulnerable to fire. So if you take a hit anywhere between the pilot and the spinner, basically you're catching on fire and you're dead, despite the fact that it has a built-in firefighting system. Now you'll notice when it shows the engine on this, maximum power of 880 horsepower. Again, the snail decided to handicap this plane. It should have a 1,000 horsepower engine. They went with the engine stats of the prototype engine, not the one that was in the IAR-81C, which had a longer development time and was more powerful. Only has a pair of 7.92 Browning machine guns, so why do I say it's got such good firepower despite the ammo they've got? That's quite a bit. There it is. Two 20mm MG151 cannons, the same as on the late model of the BF-109G. You have a lot of ammunition for them. They are very accurate, very hard hitting. They make this thing an absolute beast in a fight. And you see here, I've gotten 213 battles under my belt in the IAR-81C. In fact, my top 5 are all 109s in the IAR-81C. I'm not exceptionally good with it. I have 213 battles in it, 346 air kills, 291 ground targets. Compare that to my other ratios. It's excellent, but I do have some stuff that approaches or is better. Except in ground attack, this thing is just unbelievable at ground attack. So anyway, going forward from here, let's get into talking about it in aerial combat. So here we go. We're coming off the runway. I'm going to skip some of the slower things in this match. This is one where I have to land and rearm and get back into the fight. So you'll notice, of course, I'm doing this in the film viewer, so it's a little lurchy at the start. It always seems to do that. But I wanted to start at the beginning to show something with the IAR to keep in mind if you're not used to it and you're looking at picking it up. I hit the G button to bring the gear up as soon as my wheels left the runway. And they are still going. The IAR, for whatever reason, again, the snail decided it must be so, has probably one of the slowest, if not the slowest, gear cycles of anything that is not a hand-cranked landing gear. The early Grummins are the only things I can think of, at least of the ones that I have flown and paid attention to, that have a slower gear up and down cycle than the IAR-81C does in War Thunder. And those are literally cranked. You had a wheel on the side of the cockpit that you had to crank up or down 29 times to cycle the gear. So, yeah, for hydraulic or pneumatic or whatever the various systems are, that's the slowest. So now, skip ahead, we're getting to where we're over the front line. I'm going to be engaging some fighters in this one, a little bit of action coming up. You'll notice I am not really high because the fight was coming to me before I could get too high. The IAR has a relatively slow climb rate, and because of its low speed and that long wing, it likes to build up a lot of speed in a dive to the extent where it will start to flutter at around 400 miles an hour. It is not a Mustang or anything like that. It is not a 400 mile an hour fighter. Keep that in mind, and I can't remember if I do in this, but when you go into a steep dive in the IAR, if you want to keep from overspeeding, because the 81 was a dive bomber, the flaps function as dive brakes. You can hit the H key or whatever you have the hotkey set to be your dive brake key, and you can hit the dive brakes, keep from overspeeding. A lot of drag, boom, there you go. A lot of drag bleeds off a lot of speed, but it will keep you from overspeeding, locking up the controls, and potentially snapping a wing. So it is something to keep in mind. Maneuver flaps on this thing don't really do much. They do help a little bit, but they're not really effective. Your best bet is to try to keep this thing between about 250 and 300 miles an hour for turn fighting. You get slower than that, it gets sluggish. You get faster than that, it starts to lock up the controls. So you want to try and keep, this is one where you really have to watch your airspeed. So the first one was a P-39, I believe this one is too. And I zoom in and watch this. He goes right through the trees and keeps going. Thank you, Gaijin. Handicap my plane, but make them, able to teleport through things, but whatever. So, a little long range shot, blow his wing off. The cannons on this thing are insane, as I have said. If you're familiar with the 109 G2 and G6, especially with their MG151 20mm cannons, it's the same gun. So, it's slower, it doesn't have the climb rate, and it's, at least in my opinion, for how I fly it, more maneuverable. But as far as firepower and aiming and targeting goes, think of it like the 109G as far as that goes. You don't have the hub mounted cannon, but you do have in the wings the same firepower as the underwing gondolas on the 109G. So go a little bit of targeting of a vehicle here. Blew him up, come around, and just to show you how quickly this thing will rip through stuff. But boom, there goes the truck, and I don't know how that didn't blow up. I just didn't get a good shot in on him. That should have killed that tank, but whatever. So 2 fighters, 2 ground targets, just that quick, and then I head back because I am low below the fight and slow, and I figure the heck with it, let's get out of here. So I just go land and rearm. I would say repair and rearm, but I didn't take any damage, so just rearm. But you see I'm looking around just to make sure my tail's clear, because as I said, this thing can't outrun, but you can get into it. If you can sucker somebody who's trying to boom and zoom you into a turn fight, it is pretty effective. But as you saw with the P-39s there, everything at this tier basically is faster than you, and some of it is more powerful armament-wise also, but very few things as far as offensive capability go have the combination of ability to build up speed, maneuverability at its optimum speed, and firepower. Most things are better at one, but not better at all of them simultaneously. So once you figure it out, it's a very effective plane. So now I've rearmed, come back up, and I'm closing on a bomber that's going for one of our fields. I wanted to do this the whole length of it to show you how slow the close rate is on this, just to show you how slow this thing is. You really need to plan ahead. And if you're somebody who ever runs into me in an arena, I've been asked several times, and every time I explain it, people are like, oh, that makes sense. But I get asked several times why, when the fight's going on or everybody's heading toward the fight, I'm off to the side climbing. And then you point out how slow this thing is and how much it doesn't like to build up speed. And most people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But you really, really need to plan ahead with this. This is not a plane that you just take, launch into a fur ball, and boom, you're good to go. This is definitely one that you need to plan ahead, know what you plan to do, know its strengths, and know what you're doing going into it. That one above, because I have this set without icons, so you can't see who I kill. So I don't like to call somebody out when they do something stupid and have it be on YouTube that, hey, I shot you down, you dummy. So I always do the replays with no icons or anything on. You did see the plane above me. That was one of our bombers headed back to base. This one that I'm closing on in front of me here is the only enemy one on this sector. At this point of the match, there were 3 bombers left. All the fighters had been knocked down. I don't know what the heck he's shooting at, but whatever. That was what I was looking, was like, is there somebody down there that I'm not seeing? But whatever. This is a Wellington, which they can take one heck of a beating normally, but again, these cannons it's got, watch this. And I'm at a pretty good distance, and watch what it does here. Firing, boom, boom, hit the tail. Fire again, boom, hit the tail. Rest of the burst, he's down. I blew his tail off and lit his wing on fire, so he's dead. Uh, you'll notice also I fly without tracers on. That is an old habit. I've been in flight sims since the late 90s. Uh, if you listen to any of my podcasts, I believe my second podcast, I get into my history in flight sims, since that's something I talk a lot about. is history in aviation and aircraft. Um, Basically, I have been in flight sims since you had to pay an hourly fee to play them online in the 90s. So here I'm looking over to see if either of those two bombers are sitting on the runway. Skipped ahead just a minute or so just till I closed in, and then I spot them. They're in formation trying to climb out over there, so I go to cut them off. But getting back to the no tracers, it's something a lot of the real pilots would do because the tracers work both ways, as they say. You not only see where you're shooting and can correct your fire, it also tells the enemy where you are. And I like the element of surprise, them not knowing I'm shooting at them, and unless I'm close enough for them to hear it shoot in something like War Thunder. But also, I put a lot of effort, and I'm not always excellent at it, but I put a lot of effort into trying to get my marksmanship up so that I can be more effective with the weaponry I do have. So the tracers actually hinder your aim, in my opinion, because it's a natural tendency to watch where the tracers are going, not watch your target. So when the tracers are off, you focus on what you're shooting at more than you focus on where your shots are going. So your hit rate, marksmanship, and results in the long run, I think, go up with no tracers. So here's another Wellington. I'm diving on him. I plan to do a slashing attack, but the first burst, I believe it is here, does, yeah, there goes his wing. I planned on making a slashing attack and going back up, but the shot was more effective than I expected it would be. This last one is a B-18 Bolo. It takes me a pass or two on him, and one of our 109s comes in to help out and gets the assist on him. But first shot, smoked his engine, knocked off his flap, I believe it was. Come back around while the 109 is shooting on him. I came in close to try to distract him so he has two of us. Otherwise, I would have gone farther out. But then I get a good shot here, and boom, down he goes. So there you go, just like that. If you fly it smart, don't get stupid. 3 kills on the bombers, 2 kills of fighters, and the ground targets. Anyway, with all that said and done, thank you for watching, sitting through that. Any questions, comments, anything you want to know more about the aircraft or something else you want me to talk about, feel free to ask in the comments. Please take a second, give me a like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. It would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Help me grow a little bit and make it a little more worth my time doing these. And the ground attack one, bombing and everything will be coming up as soon as I can get it done. Try and have it done in the next couple of days here. So once again, thanks for watching and have a good day. Later.